Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the stories. Number the endless mall. I used to love shopping malls. The bright lights, the endless storefronts, the constant hum of activity. There was something comforting about being surrounded by so many people all engaged in the simple act of commerce. Even when I wasn't buying anything, I enjoyed wandering through the corridors, window shopping, watching families and teenagers and elderly couples all sharing the same space. That was before Westfield Plaza. I'd never been there before, despite having lived in Millbrook my entire life. The mall sat on the outskirts of town, past the industrial district, in an area I rarely had reason to visit. It was older than our main shopping center downtown, built sometime in the late 70s according to my mother, who remembered going there as a teenager. I'd always assumed it had closed years ago, like so many other malls across America. But when my car broke down one evening in November, just as the sun was setting and a cold drizzle had begun to fall, I found myself walking along the side of Route 16, hoping to find somewhere to wait for the tow truck. That's when I saw it, the illuminated sign for Westfield Plaza, its red letters glowing through the mist. I remember thinking it was strange that I could see lights on inside. Weren't most of these old malls abandoned? But I was cold and wet, and the prospect of waiting somewhere dry was too appealing to question. I made my way across the mostly empty parking lot, noticing only a handful of cars scattered across the vast expanse of cracked asphalt. The entrance was a set of glass doors beneath a weather-worn canopy. They slid open automatically as I approached, releasing a blast of warm air scented with that distinctive mall smell, a mixture of cleaning products, perfume samples, and food court grease. Inside, the mall appeared to be operational, if sparsely populated. The main concourse stretched out before me, a wide corridor lined with storefronts. Overhead, fluorescent lights buzzed, some flickering slightly. Potted plants that had seen better days sat at regular intervals. Music played softly from hidden speakers, some bland, easy-listening tune I couldn't quite place. What struck me immediately was how dated everything looked. The decor was pure 1980s, lots of pastels, geometric patterns, and brass railings. It was like walking into a time capsule. Yet the stores appeared to be open, their lights on, merchandise displayed in windows. I pulled out my phone to call the tow company, but found I had no signal. That wasn't entirely surprising. The area was known for spotty coverage, and the steel and concrete of the mall wouldn't help. I decided to look for a store with a landline I could use. The first shop I approached was a clothing boutique called Fashion Forward. The mannequins in the window wore styles that hadn't been popular in at least 30 years, oversized sweaters with shoulder pads, acid-washed jeans, scrunchies. I pushed open the door and a small bell jingled. "Hello," I called out. The shop was empty of customers, but racks of clothing filled the space. A sales counter stood at the back, register open but unattended. "Is anyone working here?" No response. I was about to leave when I noticed something odd about the clothing. Despite the dated styles, none of the items showed any sign of age or wear. No dust, no fading from years under fluorescent lights. Everything looked pristine, as if it had been manufactured yesterday, despite being decades out of style. I moved to the next store, an electronics shop called Sound and Vision. The window display featured boxy televisions, VCRs, and early model CD players. Again, the store was open but empty of staff. The price tags showed amounts that seemed reasonable for the 1980s but absurdly low for today. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with my damp clothes. Something was very wrong here. I continued down the corridor, peering into store after store. A toy shop with original Cabbage Patch Kids and first-generation Transformers. A bookstore featuring new hardcover releases by Stephen King and V.C. Andrews. A music store with vinyl records and cassette tapes arranged under a banner announcing "New this week." Every store was immaculately maintained, fully stocked, brightly lit, and completely devoid of employees or customers. Except I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. Occasionally, from the corner of my eye, I'd catch a glimpse of movement, a shadow passing behind a display, a figure disappearing around a corner. But whenever I turned to look directly, there was nothing there. I reached the center of the mall, where a large open area housed a food court. The familiar fast food logos were there, but many were older versions I remembered from childhood. The seating area contained about 24 tables, each with 4 plastic chairs in varying pastel colors. All empty. No, wait, not all empty. At a table in the far corner sat an elderly man in a security guard's uniform. He appeared to be eating from a paper tray, though I couldn't make out what food he had. Relief washed over me. Finally, someone I could talk to, someone who could explain this bizarre place. I approached his table. "Excuse me, sir. I'm sorry to bother you, but my car broke down outside and I need to call a tow truck. Do you have a phone I could use?" The guard looked up slowly. His face was deeply lined, his eyes a watery blue behind thick glasses. His name tag read Frank. He regarded me for a long moment before speaking. Phone's at the information desk, he said, his voice a dry rasp, just down past the fountain. Thanks, I said. Is it always this quiet here? I'm surprised the mall is even still open. Frank's expression didn't change. Westfield Plaza never closed, he said. Been open continuous since 1977. But there's nobody here, I pointed out. No customers, no employees. A slight smile creased his weathered face. Oh, they're here, you just have to know where to look. He returned his attention to his food, clearly considering our conversation over. I backed away, unsettled. The fountain he'd mentioned was visible from where I stood, a circular structure with water cascading over tiers of blue and pink marble. I headed toward it, passing a store called Time After Time, which appeared to sell nothing but clocks and watches. Something made me pause and look closer at the timepieces displayed in the window. Every single one, from the wall clocks to the wristwatches to the novelty alarm clocks, showed the exact same time, 6:37. And none of them were moving. I reached for my phone to check the actual time, then remembered it was useless without signal. I did have a watch, though, a simple Timex my father had given me years ago. I glanced at it. 6:37, that couldn't be right. It had been around 5:45 when my car broke down, and I'd been in the mall for maybe 15 minutes at most. I held the watch to my ear. It was still ticking, but the hands weren't moving. I hurried toward the information desk, trying to ignore the growing sense of dread building in my stomach. The desk was a circular kiosk in the middle of the concourse, its surface cluttered with mall directories and faded brochures for local attractions. A sign advertised free courtesy phone, with an arrow pointing to a beige push-button model sitting on the counter. I picked up the receiver and was relieved to hear a dial tone. I dialed the number for the tow company I had stored in my contacts. After 3 rings, someone answered. "Hello, you've reached Westfield Plaza Customer Service. How may I direct your call?" I nearly dropped the phone. "What?" "No, I dialed Mitchell's Towing." "I'm sorry," the female voice replied, her tone pleasantly neutral. "All external calls are routed through mall management. How may I direct your call?" "Look, my car broke down on Route 16. I need to call a tow truck." "I understand, sir. Would you like me to connect you with our automotive department?" "Manek Car Care Center is located in the East Wing, near entrance C." I rubbed my temples, frustration mounting. "No, I don't want Manek. I want to call a tow truck to take me home." "I'm afraid I can't place external calls, sir. That's not how our system works." Her voice remained eerily pleasant. "Is there something else I can help you with today?" I slammed the receiver down, my heart racing. Something was very wrong here. I needed to leave, to get back to the entrance where I'd come in. I turned around, trying to orient myself. And froze. The mall had changed. Where there had been a straight corridor leading back to the entrance, there was now a T-intersection I didn't recognize. On either side were stores I hadn't passed on my way in. A Spencer's Gifts, a Dalton bookseller, a Gadzooks. I must have gotten turned around somehow. I decided to head toward what I thought was the front of the mall, passing a store called Memories that seemed to sell only photo albums and picture frames. In the display window, I caught a glimpse of my reflection, except it wasn't quite right. My reflection moved as I moved, but it seemed slightly delayed, as if it were following me rather than mirroring me. And was it standing a bit closer to the glass than I was? I hurried past, refusing to look again. The corridor seemed to stretch on much longer than I remembered. The architecture had subtly changed too. The ceiling was higher, the walkway wider. And there were more plants now, large ferns and small trees in brass planters. After walking for what felt like 10 minutes, I should have reached an exit. Instead, I found myself in another open area, this one dominated by a 2-story carousel. The ornate horses and carriages were motionless, but lights twinkled along its canopy, and calliope music played softly. No one was operating it. No one was riding it. But as I watched, I could swear I saw one of the painted horses move slightly, as if straining against its pole. First time at Westfield, I jumped at the voice. Beside me stood a young woman, perhaps in her early 20s. She wore the uniform of a mall employee, a red vest over a white blouse, with a name tag that read Heather. Her hair was styled in a way that had been popular in the early 90s, and her makeup was similarly dated. "Yes," I said, relieved to find someone else who seemed normal. "My car broke down outside. I'm just trying to find my way back to the entrance." Heather smiled. Her teeth were very white and perfectly even. "Oh, the entrances move around sometimes. It's one of Westfield's little quirks." I stared at her. "Entrances don't move. They do here," she said, still smiling. "But don't worry, you'll find your way out eventually." "Most people do, most people," I repeated. "What does that mean, and why is this place so empty? Where are all the customers, the other employees?" Her smile faltered slightly. "We have customers, lots of them. They're shopping right now. Where? I haven't seen a single other person except for that security guard." Heather's expression became sad. "Oh, Frank, he's been here since the beginning. He doesn't see them anymore either. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. The thing about Westfield Plaza is that everyone experiences it differently. Some people see a busy, thriving mall. Some see it abandoned. Some see other things. What do you see? I asked, not sure I wanted to know the answer. Her smile returned, but it didn't reach her eyes. I see what I'm supposed to see. I've worked at Claire's Accessories for 27 years. Would you like to see our new arrivals? We have some lovely mood rings and friendship bracelets. I took a step back. You can't have worked here for 27 years. You're not old enough. That's sweet of you to say, Heather replied. But time works differently here. Hasn't anyone told you? It's always 6:37 at Westfield Plaza. With that, she turned and walked away, disappearing into a store called Claire's that I was certain hadn't been there moments before. I checked my watch again, still 6:37. I had no idea how long I'd actually been in the mall. My phone was useless. The overhead lights hadn't dimmed. There were no windows to show whether it was still day or had become night. I needed to find an exit, any exit. I picked a direction and started walking, trying to ignore the way the stores seemed to shift and change in my peripheral vision. A KB Toys became a hot topic, became a store with no name at all, just a blank sign and a darkened interior. As I walked, I began to notice something else: mannequins. Every store had them, standing in displays, posed in shop windows, and they all seemed to be facing in my direction, their blank faces turned toward me as I passed. I quickened my pace. The corridor began to slope downward, though I couldn't recall the mall having multiple levels. The decor changed too, the bright pastels giving way to darker colors, the plants becoming more overgrown, some spilling out of their planters onto the floor. The music from the speakers had changed as well. No longer bland, easy listening, it was now a slow, distorted version of what might have once been a pop song, the kind of thing you'd hear in a department store but slowed down to haunting crawl. I passed a storefront with no sign, its display window empty except for a single mannequin. Unlike the others, this one wasn't positioned in any kind of natural pose. It stood pressed against the glass, its featureless face seemingly staring directly at me. Its hands were splayed against the window, as if it were trying to push through. As I hurried past, I could have sworn I heard a tapping sound, like fingernails on glass. The corridor ended in a set of double doors marked "Emergency Exit" in faded red letters. Relief washed over me. At last, a way out. I pushed against the crash bar. The doors didn't open. I pushed harder, throwing my weight against them. They didn't budge. There was no alarm, no sound at all except the muffled music from the mall speakers. I examined the doors more closely and realized there was no seam where they should have opened. They were solid, a single piece designed to look like double doors. They don't work. I whirled around. A teenage boy stood a few feet away, hands in the pockets of his oversized jeans. His flannel shirt was tied around his waist over a Nirvana t-shirt. His hair was parted down the middle in a style I remembered from my own youth. None of the emergency exits work, he continued. Trust me, I've tried them all. Who are you? I asked. Jason, he replied. I've been here a while. He looked to be about 16, but something in his eyes seemed much older. You're new. My car broke down outside, I explained for what felt like the 100th time. I just need to find a way out. Jason nodded. Yeah, that's how it starts for a lot of people. Car trouble, or they need to use the bathroom, or they're meeting someone. He shrugged. Doesn't really matter how you get here. Getting out is the trick, so there is a way out, I asked, hope rising. Sometimes, for some people. He glanced over his shoulder, then back at me. Look, you need to be careful. Don't go into any stores if you can help it. Don't accept anything from anyone who works here, and whatever you do, don't be here when the lights flicker. What happens when the lights flicker? Jason's expression darkened. That's when they come out. The ones who never left. Before I could ask what he meant, a voice called out from further down the corridor. Jason, there you are, honey. I've been looking all over for you. A woman approached us, dressed in the height of 1990s mom fashion, high-waisted jeans, a floral blouse with shoulder pads, large gold earrings. She smiled at me as she reached us, but the expression seemed frozen, unnatural. Is this a new friend, Jason? She asked, her voice oddly flat despite the smile. Jason's demeanor had completely changed. He stood rigid, eyes downcast. Just someone asking for directions, Mom. The woman, Jason's mother, apparently kept her eyes on me. Well, we need to get going. The food court closes soon, and you know how your father gets when we're late. She placed a hand on Jason's shoulder. Her fingers seemed too long, the joints slightly off. Yeah, okay, Jason mumbled. As his mother turned him away, he glanced back at me, mouthing what looked like run. They walked away, disappearing around a corner. I stood there, trembling slightly, unsure what to do. Part of me wanted to follow them to make sure Jason was okay, but a deeper instinct told me that would be a terrible mistake. I decided to retrace my steps, to try to find my way back to the main entrance where I'd come in. But as I turned around, I realized the corridor had changed again. The emergency exit doors were gone, replaced by a long hallway lined with more stores. The lighting had dimmed slightly, giving everything a twilight quality. I began walking, trying to maintain a sense of direction. Left at Spencer's Gifts, right at the Orange Julius, straight past the Radio Shack. But the layout refused to make sense, with corridors doubling back on themselves or ending abruptly in stores that should have been walk-through passages. Time became meaningless. My watch still reads 6:37, but I had no idea how long I'd been wandering. Hours, maybe. My legs ached and thirst clawed at my throat. I hadn't seen anyone else since Jason and his mother. No security guard, no helpful Heather, no other lost visitors. Just mannequins. More and more mannequins in increasingly strange poses. Some crouched as if ready to spring, others contorted in ways that would be impossible for a human body. And all of them, every single one, seemed to be oriented toward me as I passed. I was nearing exhaustion when I stumbled upon an area I recognized, the food court. The relief of finding a familiar landmark was short-lived, however, when I realized something had changed. The tables were now occupied. Not by people, by mannequins. They sat in groups of twos and threes, posed as if in mid-conversation or enjoying meals that weren't there. Some held empty trays, others had their featureless heads tilted toward each other as if sharing secrets. And at the far table where I'd first seen Frank the security guard, sat another mannequin in a guard's uniform. A name tag reading Frank was pinned to its chest. I backed away slowly, then turned to flee and found my path blocked by another mannequin. This one wore a red vest over a white blouse, its name tag read Heather. It hadn't been there a moment ago, I was certain of that. I skirted around it, breaking into a run as soon as I was past. I sprinted down the corridor, no longer caring about finding an exit, just wanting to put distance between myself and those awful, silent figures. The overhead lights flickered. I remembered Jason's warning and ran faster, my footsteps echoing loudly in the empty mall. The lights flickered again, longer this time, plunging the corridor into darkness for a second before returning. In that second of darkness, I heard movement, a sound like dozens of joints popping, like plastic limbs creaking into new positions. When the lights came back on, the mannequins had moved. They were still in their store windows, still in their displays, but their poses had changed. They were all facing outward now, toward the corridor, toward me. The lights flickered again, darkness, more sounds of movement, closer now, light. The mannequins were out of their windows, standing in the corridor, still not moving while I could see them, but closer, much closer. I ran blindly, taking turns at random, no longer trying to navigate, just trying to escape. The lights continued to flicker, and with each momentary darkness, the sounds of pursuit grew closer. I rounded a corner and found myself facing a store I hadn't seen before. The sign above it read Exit in glowing red letters. Through its windows I could see daylight, real daylight, and what looked like the parking lot beyond. Hope surged through me. I sprinted toward it just as the lights flickered again. In the darkness I heard the sound of running feet, of plastic hands slapping against the floor. They were no longer pretending to be inanimate when the lights went out. The lights came back on as I reached the store. I yanked open the door and rushed inside. It was some kind of gift shop filled with Westfield Plaza souvenirs, t-shirts, coffee mugs, snow globes, and at the back a glass door leading outside. I weaved through the merchandise displays, knocking over a rack of postcards in my haste. Behind me I heard the store's door open again. I didn't look back. The exit was only feet away when I noticed the figure standing behind the counter. An elderly man, his face deeply lined, eyes watery behind thick glasses. Frank, he wasn't a mannequin here, but a person, or something that looked like one. "Leaving so soon?" he asked, his voice that same dry rasp I remembered. "Most folks stay longer, much longer." "Let me out," I demanded, reaching for the door. It was locked. Frank shook his head slowly. "Can't leave without paying." He gestured to the merchandise around us. "Gotta take a souvenir." Rules of the mall. Behind me I could hear the soft scrape of plastic feet on linoleum. The mannequins were in the store now, blocking my retreat. "What do I have to buy?" I asked desperately. "I'll take anything." Frank reached under the counter and produced a snow globe. Inside was a perfect miniature of Westfield Plaza, accurate down to the smallest detail. "This one's popular," he said. "Only $6.37. I dug into my pocket, pulled out my wallet, and thrust a $10 bill at him. "Keep the change, just let me out." Frank took the money and handed me the snow globe. As soon as my fingers closed around it, I heard a click. The exit door had unlocked. I yanked it open and stumbled out into the parking lot. The sun was setting, the same sunset I'd seen when I first entered the mall. My watch suddenly ticked forward, the hands spinning rapidly until they showed the correct time. Only about 20 minutes had passed in the outside world. I ran across the parking lot toward the road, the snow globe still clutched in my hand. I didn't stop running until I reached a gas station a half-mile away, where I used their phone to call a real tow truck. I never went back to Westfield Plaza. My car was eventually towed from where I'd left it, and I took a substantial hit on my insurance for abandoning it. But I couldn't bring myself to return to that place, not even in daylight, not even with other people. The snow globe sits on my shelf now. I've tried to throw it away dozens of times, but it always finds its way back. Sometimes when I look at it closely, I can see tiny figures moving inside the miniature mall, shopping, browsing, trapped, and sometimes when I shake it, I swear I can hear the faint sound of that distorted mall music playing from within. And if I look very, very carefully, I can see a tiny figure standing in the food court, wearing my clothes, endlessly searching for an exit that isn't there, because part of me never left Westfield Plaza. And the mall, it seems, never fully closes.